Saskia, can you tell me why we are in a sukkah?
Yes, we are in the Sukkah because we are remembering the Exodus from Egypt, where we dwelt, in the wilderness, and the Sukkah kind of symbolizes the Shekhinah, which accompanied us. So the clouds that gathered over the Jews while they were in the Midbar.
Okay, great, great. So, Saskia's clearly done her research. Um, so in the book of Exodus, it says, "I caused you to dwell in Sukkot, in booths, when you left Egypt." What's the problem with that verse? Does anybody know, anybody who's read Exodus, what did the Jews live in? Ignoring that verse, what did the Jews live in?
Intense.
They lived in tents, not Sukkot. It
Hmm.
never says they lived in Sukkot, they live in tents.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's a dispute. One person says, no, no, they really lived in booths. But the other side says, when it says you dwelled in booths, it really means you dwelled under the protection of the divine glory. Right? When the Jews marched through the desert, they were protected by this cloud of glory, the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And so the Sukkah represents the divine presence. The most important part of the Sukkah is the roof. The rest of it, you could have a courtyard of a building where it's always there. It's just concrete walls, courtyard of a building. You just have to put the roof on. The walls, what the walls are made of, doesn't really matter. They have to be walls, but what they're made of doesn't really matter. The schach, on the other hand, there's lots of rules about it. Does anybody know what the schach? The schach is the material we cover the sukkah with. Does anybody know the requirements for the schach?
It should be like not completely shut off, so you need to see the stars in the night and air
So,
flowing in between,
so that's
like from
actually
natural
not.
materials.
Yeah, I grew up hearing that, and there's like all. It's actually not halachically. You don't have to be able to see the stars, but there
Oh,
can't be anything over it. So you can't be under another roof, under a tree, under anything else. You can't have a two-floor sukkah. If you have a two-floor sukkah, the top one's kosher, the bottom isn't. But you could put palm fronds layered, the way the Native Americans do these roofs here, or did these roofs here in Florida, right? They have these grass roofs, and I look at these and I'm like, oh, that would be a kosher sukkah. Yes, Saskia.
It has to have more shade than sun, and it has
Yeah.
to be made from material that grows from on the ground.
So, yeah, number one, it has to have more shade than sun, and it has to be made from materials that grow from the ground and no longer are connected to the ground. So in my sukkah, I have bamboo mats, and then I go out collecting palm fronds in the neighborhood. Um, yep. Um, it has to be, by the way, a minimum of in the Talmud they measure distances by like hand breadths, arm lengths. So it has to be 10 hand breadths high. That's the minimum. Why do you think they give 10 hand breadths? What's that the minimum for?
I'm just guessing, but I think so you can sit in it.
Yeah, so you can sit in it. So practically speaking, 10 hand breadths is so you can sit in it. It also symbolically um, is the closeness that Moses came to heaven. So they say Moses never actually went all the way to heaven to get the top 10 commandments. He went really close. He went within 10 hand breadths. So Ben, I saw your eyes go up. So why did your eyes go up?
I'm going to press the right button here in a moment. Well, I just thought that was kind of interesting because he did go up on the mountain. We don't know really what happened, but yeah, I've read that part of it there. So that's why I didn't know it
Okay.
was I didn't know it was 10 handbreadth. So
Well, there's lots, by the way, there's lots of mystical
yeah,
books that assume he got all the way to heaven, right? The Midrash that he's arguing with the angels and all this.
yeah.
Um, but this is what the Talmud says. So if that's the case, then in the Sukkah, we are as close as we can be to God's presence. So given that, why is it right after Yom Kippur?
Has done the Torah.
Go ahead, Melina.
For me, first of all, we are just finish the whole book of Torah, but at the same time, after we purify ourselves, so it's the moment that we are, we are doing a celebration, and
Yeah,
so we are close to God, kind of.
yeah, we've purified ourselves, and with Yom Kippur, we are trying to get God's presence back. So when there's sin in the world, when the world's a bad place, it drives God's presence away. And on Yom Kippur, we allow for God's presence to come back by purifying ourselves, purifying everything. So we just celebrate having this reestablished presence of God. Um, what are we supposed to do in the sukkah? Does anybody know?
Must have meal.
Must have meal. How many meals do you know?
Um, I
In
don't know at
Talmudic
least,
time,
but at
so
least
yeah, Melina, you know?
Uh, I mean, treat. No, no, no. Sorry, at least one.
So in Talmudic times, people ate 2 meals a day. They did not eat 3 meals a day. I think they'd eat like a late breakfast and then a supper. So halakhically, we're supposed to have 2 meals a day in the sukkah, lunch and dinner. Um, there are people who won't eat anything outside the sukkah. Like technically, you're allowed to have a snack outside the sukkah. Um, if you're on a business trip, you're not. It's only those things you would do at home. So there are some people though who will not even have a glass of water outside the sukkah. Um, but the you know, yeah. So 14 meals. Have you heard of anything else people do in the sukkah?
Sleeping and praying.
So ideally you're supposed to live in it, right? So some people sleep in it. Although it's interesting, Chabad, they will not sleep in the sukkah because if we're that close to God's presence, like it's kind of rude to fall asleep in God's presence. You know what I mean? Like you don't go into like the courtyard, you don't go into the throne room of the king and then take a nap. So this is like the holy of holies right now. We're inside the holy of holies. We're surrounded by divine light. So we wouldn't. So some people wouldn't actually sleep, but yes, sleeping. I've heard of people putting TVs in their sukkah, air conditioning, all sorts of things, because it says anything you would do in your house, you should do in the sukkah. Um, Another thing we do is welcoming guests. So both physical guests and also spiritual guests. Have you guys heard of the spiritual guests we welcome?
She's seen.
The Ushpizin, right? In Aramaic, it's called Ushpizin. By the way, name of a wonderful movie about Sukkot as well, Ushpizin. And we symbolically invite Abraham, right, the first Jew in the Torah, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, and King David. Um, by the way, a lot of wonderful stories about people who are actually visited by these Ushpizin. There's one story, I forget who it's about. Um, this guy goes to visit. I forget the setup, but he goes to visit another synagogue on Sukkot, and he's hoping that someone invites him over for a meal because he doesn't have anywhere to go. He doesn't have a sukkah, so he really hopes someone invites him over. So there's this guy. He says he's a baker, and he said, the town baker invites. He said, I've got a ramshackle sukkah up on my roof. You kind of have to go on some ladders. It looks like it might fall, but it's good for now. So we'd love to have you. So he comes to the sukkah, and the first night, he's like really upset. He wants to be with his rabbi, and he's in this weird town with this weird baker, and the sukkah's going to fall apart. And he's sitting there so upset. And while he's sitting there, his host is saying, Ushbizin Ilain, welcome, welcome, Abraham. And at that moment, someone knocks on the door, and another baker comes in, all dusty and floury and dirty. And this guy's just sitting there the whole time, ignoring it, ignoring the guests, ignoring the host, and upset that he's not at home. Same thing happens the second night when the man invites Isaac, so on. So he goes through all of Sukkot, and then he gets back home, and he finally makes it to his rabbi. His rabbi says, "So did you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?" He says, "What are you talking about?" And he realizes that those people who came to the sukkah were the real Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That not paying attention, he missed them. So we invite guests. We treat them. Another mitzvah of Sukkot is rejoicing. So we're obligated to have joy. Um, so on a simple level, does anybody know what the Talmud says is joyful on Sukkot? It says for the men, meat and wine, for the women, clothing and jewelry, and for kids, nuts and fruit. But Rambam comes and he says, look, there's joy of the belly and there's a joy of doing a mitzvah. And when you eat and drink and you're hanging out by yourself, that's just the joy of the belly. Simchat Kristo. That's not real joy. The joy they're talking about is the joy of doing a mitzvah. So when you invite in the guests and when you create like a joyous Sukkot community experience, that's real joy. Okay, the fourth species. So we have here the lulav and etrog. This is my lulav. Uh-oh. This is... Hold on. My sukkah's not waterproof, so I'm gonna have to go inside here. By the way, they say even if you're uncomfortable in the sukkah, even if your eye itches, you don't have to stay in the sukkah. Can you guys hear? There's a lawnmower outside. Can you hear okay?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just got rained out, but you got to sit in my sukkah with me. By the way, when we're in the sukkah, there's a special blessing. Anybody know what the blessing means when we're in the sukkah?
I mean, I know the bless. I don't know it by heart, but it means sitting in the sukkah, לשבת בסוכה.
It's actually, yeah, it's so there's a special blessing, shave basukah. Lasheva would be to sit, shave is to dwell, to live in the sukkah. So every time we have our meal in the sukkah, we say, "Blessed are you, God, who gives us the mitzvah of living in the sukkah." And then we also have the four species. This is my etrog. The etrog, by the way, this is the pitom on the top. If it loses the pitom, it's not kosher. So there's lots of Sukkot stories that involve angry wives biting off pitoms to spite their husbands. Like the husband went and spent too much on the etrog. The wife cuts it off. The husband comes back and dances with his wife. She says, "Why you're dancing with me?" He says, "Well, I can't bench lulav. All I can do is make my wife happy." So when my son was 3, by the way, walking home from synagogue the first day of Sukkot, the first day he bites the pitom off because everybody's always saying, "Don't bite the pitom off." So he's like, "Oh, what happens if I bite the pitom off?" So you may or may not want to tell children not to bite the pitom off. And then these are the other of the four species, right? This is the palm, this is the myrtle, and this is willow. So couples symbolism, what body part does this look like? Very long and thin, very, very long. Everybody
A
know?
bone?
What?
Like spine.
Yeah, the spine, yes. So they say this looks like the spine. If you look at my myrtle leaves, they're kind of almond shaped. Do they look a little like my eye? So those look like my eye. The willow is kind of shaped like a mouth. And the etrog, any guesses what this is shaped like? This is an internal body part.
Heart?
Brain, maybe.
Yeah, my heart. So they say that why would I bring the four of these together?
I think it should be in two different hands, isn't it?
You start in the right, I think, then you put it into both. So
Oh,
I put them together, but you have to put them together. So when I put them together, I'm bringing together all of my body in serving Hashem, right? My heart, my deeds, my words, the way I look. And then the other thing they say is that these are 4 different kinds of Jews. The etrog smells good and you can eat it. So this represents Jews who have actions and Torah learning. The myrtle smells good but doesn't have any fruit. So I guess this is people who do Torah learning but don't have any mitzvot. The dates don't have a smell but taste good. So this is people who have mitzvot but don't do any learning. And the willow doesn't have items. So these are Jews who don't learn and don't do mitzvot. So why do we bring them all together?
Because they're all Jews.
So we're all Jews and we all need to be together as a community. So we need to all
Yes.
bind ourselves together. Yeah. And so of course the spiritual message of Sukkot is what?
If you talk about the four species, it's unity, and otherwise it's divine protection.
So divine protection, right? We don't rely on our material possessions. We rely on God, not possessions. So Sukkot lasts 7 days. The first 2 days are Yontif. That means there's similar rules to Shabbat. And then the middle is called Chol HaMoed, or intermediate days. So on Chol HaMoed, you still eat in the sukkah. There's some special prayers, but you can do work. There are a lot of rules about things you're not supposed to do, there's a lot of details, but basically if you have to work, you can work. Then after Sukkot is another holiday. Anybody know the name of the other holiday?
Shmini Atzeret.
Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret. So Shmini means 8, so it's the 8th day. And the second day of Shmini Atzeret, and all it is a festival tacked on to the end of Sukkot. The second day of Shmini Atzeret is Simchat Torah, where we finish reading the Torah for the year, and then we immediately start from the beginning. There's a lot of dancing. There's a big party. In the night, they don't quite finish Torah, but there's a big party. And in the morning, generally, they finish the Torah reading, and then they start again. Any other questions about Sukkot?
I was going to say the one thing you didn't mention was the number of walls.
I did not mention the number of walls. Do you want to mention the number of walls? Go ahead.
You got to have at least 2.5, I think, because you're talking about, you can back it up to something as long as you don't have an overhang there. But you should ideally have 3 in a part so you can get in there.
2 and apart. Yeah. That's why I said an atrium, like an indoor atrium where you already have the 4 walls as part of the house. Like, let's say you have a house shaped like a U and you have or even an internal courtyard where you have those walls, then you could just put the Scotch over. But you need 2 and apart.
And then last year, what I did is I took the etrog and put it in the food processor and used that for Havdalah.
In the food processor?
Yeah, I chopped it up and used it as my spices for Havdalah.
Oh, like you dried it, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The classic thing I've heard, by the way, is you put cloves in it all around. It shrivels up, and then it's got those cloves around it. And then I've heard of that, but that's cool too. Okay, so we're starting. Last week we talked about basic Jewish beliefs. The one thing we didn't touch on, there were a couple of things I wanted to touch on. So we talked a little bit about why Judaism why Jesus, strictly speaking, seems like idolatry to Judaism. There's a couple other issues in terms of the relationship of Judaism Christianity that I feel like kind of need to acknowledge. So why are Jews historically so what's the Jewish impression of Christianity? Does anybody know? So first of all, Jesus obviously, right, worshiping a person, thinking a person is God. The other thing is that Jesus rejected mitzvot, right? Really, Paul did. But by rejecting mitzvot, by saying you don't have to follow the Torah, that's a pretty big rejection. And then, of course, what we discussed about how the Messiah minimally has to restore the Jews to their homeland and bring peace. The other thing is that there is such a huge history of persecution between the Christian and Jewish world. So the Christians have been killing Jews for, thousands of years. I was actually really struck there. We did an interfaith dialogue, and a minister at it said, so many fewer Jews would have been killed if the church had stood up and said, Jews are not all going to hell. So for thousands of years, the Christian churches have been saying Jews are going to hell, Jews kill Jesus. Um, so for this reason, there's a real defensiveness against Christianity that you'll find. Um, right? Like I think a lot of people feel like they feel like they can be Jewish and Christian, but a lot of the Jewish community feels like, it's a pretty firm boundary. Um, we didn't talk about denominations so much. So, what do you know about what do you know about the different denominations? Let me pull up the list. So what do you know about what denominations are there?
Reform, conservative,
All right.
reconstructionist,
Okay, so let's go historically. The oldest is actually Reform.
orthodox.
Okay, and what do you guys know about Reform? And by the way, it's Reform. Not a lot of people nowadays say Reformed ed on the end. It's actually Reform Judaism. What do you know about Reform?
In Reform, the written Torah was inspired but not written by God.
Okay, good. So good. So Torah inspired by God. Um, so as a result, what parts of the Torah do we follow? Do you know?
What makes sense, that's we follow.
So we follow the ethical,
Like,
ethical stuff
yeah.
and whatever stuff and what is
And
meaningful.
and oral Torah is rabbi's opinions.
Yep, good. Um, the prayer services, has anybody here been to a Reform prayer service?
Oh, yeah.
Why the moan, Ben?
Well, that's what we have locally here. And
Okay,
so, if you want something a little more traditional, we have to go to Sacree. So, yeah, I
okay.
mean,
So
that's all we
so
have.
what's non-traditional about the services?
You don't do the whole thing.
So the
Um,
services are abbreviated.
right. Yeah, yeah. And the prayers are abbreviated and also they're in Hebrew and English.
So
So
there's
it's not,
lots, right. So lots of music in English.
and lots of music.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Orthodox. What can you guys tell me about Orthodoxy? So services generally all in
Both
Hebrew.
written Torah and oral Torah should be followed strictly,
Good.
as far as
So okay. Anything else?
Like
Um,
anything, take anything away.
what's that?
You can neither add nor take anything away.
Right. Right. So which is really that's from the Torah itself. Or the Torah itself says do not add or take away a mitzvah. So I'm going to say can't change halacha. Um, so the book that is the kind of most important code book of halacha for the Orthodox world is the Shulchan Aruch. Um, so services all in Hebrew. What else about the services?
Separation, I think, of
Yep,
men.
men and women separated.
and also there cannot be female rabbis in
Yep,
Orthodox, but in Reform you can, as far as I know,
yeah,
but I am not really sure.
yep. So women can't lead services, be rabbis. I'm going to put a star on this because there's a couple, there is a seminary that's ordaining women rabbis, but it's like they don't call them rabbis, and I don't know, but they're starting to. Um, okay, who can tell me what conservative is? Okay, so conservative does believe in following halacha, but often will find room for for more modern approaches. So follow halacha, but find room for modern approaches based on written and oral Torah. So they'll find a basis in written and oral, written the Talmud and stuff for stuff that's different from orthodoxy. Okay, so as opposed to just like throwing it out and saying, well, we don't follow that, they say we are halachic, but here's what we believe halakha says for today. Services are mixed Hebrew English. Well, what's your experience? Was anybody here been to a conservative service?
Oh yeah, went to one in Memphis.
All right, so what was the service like?
Um, in all deference to you, sir, it was long.
I was going to say that. Right. So service is basically they're Hebrew and English, not abbreviated, so it ends up being very long, honestly. So men and women sit together. Any other noticeable? Now, recently, and I would say this started in the last 20 years, and it's not all conservative rabbis are on board with all of it. I'm certainly not. There's been a shift to the left. They have been accept gay marriage and transgender, whatever you call it. Right. Um, any other impressions about? Oh, the other thing about conservative Judaism you'll notice is that by and large, the joke is that there's no such thing as a conservative Jew. There's basically Reform congregants with Orthodox rabbis. So by and large, for the most part, conservative synagogues, a lot of the people don't actually follow the rules of conservative Judaism. So that's kind of one of the issues they have. Anything else about conservative Judaism you guys know or wonder?
There's a word associated with it, Masorti. Isn't that right?
Masorti, yeah. Outside of America, it's called Masorti.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Reconstructionism. Does anybody know what Reconstructionism is? So Reconstructionism, they are a 20th century movement. So they're very modern. They believe in what did I just do? Did I just do something?
Sorry, I was trying to move the screen.
Judaism as an evolving civilization. So they believe that things like keeping kosher are not really from God, but they represent our evolving spiritual, ethical sensibilities, and that Judaism should be democratic. In other words, let the people decide.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because that's where I started, and it was kind of interesting. It had all flavors in there.
Ben, what do you mean?
Well, the education was varied. In other words, we're taking from all discussions, every question, all the issues, and rebuilding from there.
Right. Right. They have this idea of like there should be a process that for any decision there should be the community process. They have this idea of values-based decision making, um, based on value. Okay. Um, the last one, which I'm actually honestly fonder of than I am of conservative, is renewal. Anybody have any experience with renewal? I know Melina actually attends a renewal place. Um, so renewal tries to capture traditional spirituality without necessarily um, being tied to traditional liturgy. So, um, rediscover. So there's a big focus on spirituality. Um, there are people, if you go to renewal gatherings, who are basically Orthodox. There are people who are um, not not particularly observant. Oh, the other thing about so conservative, we talked about whether the Torah is from God. I would say most conservative rabbis probably believe the results of archaeology and and those kind of history, um, but that they still find halacha obligatory. Um, the one other that is not a major movement, but have you ever, as anybody, you might hear of it, is humanistic, and this is basically Judaism without God. Um, Now, you guys, you keep in mind, you don't need to actually become one kind of a Jew, right? You don't need to convert into reform or into conservative. Um, you you don't need to put yourself in a box. I don't consider when people ask me what kind of a Jew I'm like, I'm a meaningful Jew. I'm a observant Jew, but I don't want to I don't fit in any of these boxes. You don't have to. Basically, you do your conversion with whatever rabbis you feel comfortable with. You attend synagogue where you feel comfortable. Um, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't think that you need to convert into um, one stream, and that's what kind of a Jew you are. When you convert, you just become a Jew. Any other questions about denominations?
There was one other strain that I had heard about that was um, literal in that they only follow Torah and the written Torah and do not follow Talmud at all.
Yeah. So I don't. I've
There
never
we
heard
go.
of.
That's it.
I've never heard of a community of these. Um, I've heard of. I've never actually seen or heard of a real community of these. It's called Karaites. So there's no oral
Yeah.
Torah, only written. But it's very hard. I don't even know how you do it because, like Shabbat, it doesn't say what a labor is. Um, there's so much of what we do is actually based on oral Torah. Just about everything we do is based on the Talmud, not the written Torah. But yes, that's called Karaites.
I
Um,
ran into some in Seattle. That's the only place I've ever seen them.
oh, okay, interesting.
They
Um,
they have a synagogue in Istanbul as well.
oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Karaites. Interesting.
Yeah. Because since they have, let's say, at least in Turkey, they claim Turkic origin from very past times, from
Yeah,
ancient times.
it's probably very old.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they also pray in Turkish as well. They have their own language. I mean, old Turkic, but not new modern Turkish, but old
Is it
Turkic.
like a combination of Old Turkish and Hebrew?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, I didn't know that. What's it
yeah.
called? What's that language called?
They have this Karay synagogue. We call them Karay in Turkey, and
Yeah.
it's called Karay synagogue.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I wanted to look at screens. Let me just pull up. I asked you guys to read the beginning of the Genesis. Um, let me just pull it up. Okay, so is everyone here familiar with Genesis, with the beginning of the Torah? Is anyone here not familiar with it? So let me ask, right? In Genesis, we have God creating the world by speech and creating in 7 days. Um, Science says the world is 16 billion years old. So how do you personally reconcile the Torah narrative with the scientific description? Yes, Saskia, please.
She just read a very interesting commentary on that in the Hebrew, it actually only says that Hashem created the light, like that's the only thing he created. And then the earth was like like this blob, this blur, and he made everything out of this existing blob. And that actually a lot of the things that we read in Genesis are when you interpret them, they actually kind of align with what science says. So I thought that was really interesting, because it referred to this tohu vabohu. The earth was tohu vabohu. So the commentary that I thought that was quite interesting.
So what's the tohu vabohu in science? What's it referring to in the scientific description?
Well, basically, that there was like this mass, this like undefined mass out of which something was created.
Huh. Okay. So the tohu vabohu being like the undefined mass kind of the
Or
first
matter, basically.
couple seconds of the universe. Um,
Yeah.
so it's interesting because, yeah, so there's different ways of reconciling science with religion. Because it's funny because when I think of them as the same, I actually go to the Zohar where the Zohar talks about a spark emerging from the darkness. And so it actually in the Zohar, it actually everything comes in that moment. There's nothing pre-existing. But you're right. Here, the earth is unformed and void, and then we have light. And no one says that the first day lasted 24 hours. So there is a book out there that says, hey, what if the first day lasted 8 billion years? Right? When we're talking about the creation of light, what if that's the first 8 billion years? And the second day is 4 billion years, and the third day is 2 billion, and so on. And you can map the evolution of the universe over 16 billion years onto these 6 days of creation.
Also, Steinsaltz wrote that in one of his books that saying that it only lasted 24 hours is putting limits on something that doesn't have limits.
Okay. So that's interesting. So when you say it doesn't have limits, does that mean it's not referring to a length of time?
It's not up to us to put limits on Hashem.
Okay. Because another interpretation is that these days are not about a length of time, they're about different aspects of divine energy coming into the universe.
Right.
Right. When we read it as days, we're reading it in a very limited way. So this idea that, it literally means 7 days, that's what it means, is a very limited reading. Yes, Melina.
I wanted to say we can see it more like 7 levels rather than,
Exactly.
excuse me, pardon, rather than days. For me is more like levels, like
Yeah.
each level which has been completed, Hashem has created world in 6 levels,
Yeah.
maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the mystical understanding of it, right? Philosophically, so to throw around a ridiculous word, it would be that's called ontology, right? These are ontological levels, not they're not time, they're not about the time, they're about like the kind of what's underlying the universe. Um, any other approaches to how or whether to reconcile the Torah and science?
I've heard an interesting theory about time dilation, which relates
So
to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Just a kind of a gravitational issue where time changes based on gravity, or it's more an issue of perspective as to, where was this actually written?
So the book that I was referring to about the 8 billion years, 4 billion, he has that idea. I think it's called I don't know if it's called Genesis and Creation or something, but that's the same book where he talks about time dilation. Um, I personally am torn because like you can reconcile them, or another approach is just to say don't bother reconciling them. The Torah is not about science, it's about ethics and spirituality, right? It's not about and maybe this goes to what Melina was saying, like these are levels of the universe. These are spiritual layers of reality. This is not talking about the physical creation of the universe. This is talking about the kind of spiritual layers of reality. So that's another approach. Um, just want to point out a couple things. In the second verse, now, by the way, I think, was it Saskia who pointed out that there was something there already? Our modern assumption that God created everything, it it doesn't look that way here, right? The earth was unformed and void. It kind of seems like that was there before God started to create. So it might be a kind of modern philosophical addition to the Torah when we say, oh, God created everything. But if the image here is The earth was unformed and void, with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God. I don't like sweeping. Let's change translations here. And I think I like Fox. So if you look at these different translations, they all try to do different things. I think it's the Koran translation tries to translate it according to Rashi. But if we can find Everett Fox, let's see. Oh, here we go. If you look at Everett Fox tries to translate the Torah and give you a sense of the actual language. So he says the rushing spirit of God soaring over the waters. Actually, maybe I'll go with Rashi here. Here, JPS 1917, Spirit of God hovered. So if God's hovering, what else hovers in their world? Assuming they haven't seen UFOs, what else can hover?
Birds.
Birds, yeah. So the first image of God is that of a bird hovering over her nest, a mother bird hovering over and protecting her eggs. So it's just interesting. That's the first image. So then it says, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light was good. God separated the light from the darkness. God called it light day and the darkness night. There was evening, there was morning, the first day. By the way, the reason Jewish days always begin in the evening, right? So Sukkot began, Friday night begins in the evening with sundown, is because of this. There was evening and there was morning. So our days, that's why our days begin at sunset. So what's the one thing here physics cannot tell us? Physics has
That the
nothing to say
light
about.
is good.
Yeah, that's good, right? The one thing this adds that science can't add is that it's good. What's the implication if creation is good?
That
So,
is blessed. That
so what? Mhm.
I think, yeah, I think it's like meaning of blessing that it was really, really created by the universe, by God.
So what I'm getting at is if it's good, that means that we should protect it, right? It's worth protecting. It's worth protecting something that's good. Um, there
Also, there's
and
some metric by which you can determine that.
yeah, there's a metric by which you can determine good and evil. There is such a thing as good and evil in the universe. Um, it's with the philosophers who try to come up with definitions of good and evil without relying on anything like that have a very hard time, right? It's very hard without religion to come and say that there is such a thing as good, there is such a thing as evil. And you get these kids coming out of schools in America who can't say that it's evil, that not, that Nazism or genocide is evil. They can say, well, that's an opinion, it's not a fact. So it's an assertion that no, there is such a thing as good and evil. The Sefer Yetzirah says there are 10 dimensions to the universe. There's the six, right? The six spatial dimensions. Time is 7 and 8, and good and evil is 9 and 10. Going to verse 26. Okay, the creation of people. So first God's made all the animals, all the fish, all the birds. Then God says, let us make humankind in our image, after our likeness. They shall rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle of the whole earth, and all the creeping things that creep on earth. God created humankind in the divine image, creating it in the image of God, creating them male and female. So what do you notice?
Well, you have the male and the female right there, all in one unity.
Okay, good. So you have male and female in one. What does that tell you? How do you what?
Well, I think it's actually quite interesting because, there was always this discussion that the Bible is maybe a little sexist because man was created first and then woman was created from the limb of man. But reading this verse, you could argue that actually, they were created at the same time and just, spiritually, and then at least physically, like man and women existed, and then there was just man, and woman was kind of, I don't know, it sounds weird, maybe extracted, but she already existed, so she wasn't like a second. She already existed equally with man.
Yeah. So the way that the Midrash says, it says that the first human was du partsufim, at two faces, man facing one side, woman facing the other. And then to make man this human into man and woman, God splits them apart. So it's not like Eve is created later, although there is that whole bit because Eve doesn't know what God commanded. It doesn't all work so well because Eve doesn't know that God didn't say not to touch the tree of life, but we won't go there. So God splits them down in the middle. And when we find our Besheret, our soulmate, we're finding the other half of our soul. So human beings are not complete when we're alone. Another symbol of that is that when we give the half shekel donation every year, we give a half a shekel, right? Also to symbolize that we're not complete when we're alone. What else do you notice here?
In the image of God, there
Yeah.
is
So what?
male and female. So
So
when we actually combine with our female partner, then we actually make the perfect. We become
yeah.
God, basically, like
Yes.
godlike or something like that.
Well, so what does it mean, the image of God?
It means being whole, I guess.
Being whole?
Yeah.
I think it means, I think what's important to understand is that it doesn't mean the physical image, obviously, but the spiritual image. So, we should emulate the divine things like mercy, justice, kindness, and that's what it means to be created to, that's the kind of our task to bring these divine qualities into the world because we are created in the divine image.
Right. And I'm going to combine what you said with what Farad said, and that it's in relationship, right? It's only in loving relationship that we are in the image of God, right? It's only when I do something loving for someone else. The name of God itself is a pictorial representation of that kind of loving relationship. So the name of God in Hebrew, do you guys know the name of God in Hebrew? It's, how do you spell it?
Well, there are two names, right? Now it's only the one name, which signifies the one part of the divine, and then later we get the other name.
I'm just sticking with the four-letter name of God, Yod Heh Vav Heh here. Okay.
Okay.
So everybody sees I've got Yod Heh Vav Heh here on the screen. So the Yud is symbolic of the gift that's given. The second letter, the Hey, so Hey is the outstretched hand that gives. Hey is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Its value is 5. And also, if you look on your hand, you've got a Hey everyone's got a Hey on their hand. You've got the top part of the Hey, the bottom part of the Hey. So that's like the outstretched hand of the giver. Vav, the middle, that third letter that goes up and down, that's the connection between the two hands. And the last Hey is the receiver. So the Zohar says that when a person gives tzedakah, that person needs the recipient because only together can they be in the image of God. Right? Only when I have someone to give tzedakah to, then the two of us together are in the image of God. Now, nothing else. So that's the kind of ethical line of thinking. The other aspect of the image of God is, does it make a difference that we can think versus the animals that can't think and aren't in God's image?
I was going to go to that because it's what differentiates us from animals that is in the divine image.
Well, is there a connection between the two?
There's a connection, but there are things that make us different from animals, and that is
Right.
what is in his image. That's
Right.
all I'll get.
Right. So the other approach is to say the image of God is the intellect. But what's the connection between the two? So having an intellect, I can decide to have good characteristics, right? I can make a conscious decision to be a good person. So that's what I was getting at with it, with the connection between the two. Okay. In chapter 2, verse 7, there's a slightly more detailed description where it says, God formed the human from the soil's humus, blowing into his nostrils the breath of life. The human became a living being. So from this, we have this idea that our soul is actually a breath from God. Um, as long as we have our soul, as long as we can breathe, we're considered alive. Halachically, this is why people are considered alive until they um, no longer can breathe on their own. And also, babies are considered their own life once they start breathing on their own. One other thing, a couple other things I want to just touch on without really going into the text. The Garden of Eden. Eve eats the apple, she gets cursed. Adam eats, he gets cursed. The snake gets cursed. Um, is this original sin? Is this imply original sin? What do you think?
In my opinion, no, because what original sin says is that because they did it, we did it.
Good,
And
right.
we're
So
created in God's image, so how can something that God creates be endued with sin right off the bat?
right. So in other words, we're not born considered guilty of Adam's sin. We're not born with like with a debt on the ledger. However, we are born with a Yetzer Hara. We are born with an evil inclination. And when we turn 12 for girls, 13 for boys, then we actually start being responsible for what's on that ledger. So, right, we're not born with this kind of impossible debt that we can never pay off. Um, but our souls, and the other thing is our souls are imperfect when we're born, right? We're born with character flaws. And as we grow up, as we become older, we realize our character flaws and hopefully we perfect them. There is an idea that our job in life is to perfect our soul. And we keep getting reincarnated until we perfect that soul. So it's not like original sin in that, like, we're not being condemned for it, but in a sense, it's like we have to continually perfect ourselves to bring Mashiach, to get to the level of Mashiach.
And this calendar is based upon self-improvement,
Absolutely.
every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rabbi Manus Friedman's has this theory that God wanted us to choose to eat the fruit. I don't know how you reconcile that with the explicit command not to eat the fruit, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I would say there's an interesting way to read the Torah, which is to say it's the humanity and the Jews are growing up, right? Like um, God wants us to keep us a baby, to keep us completely swaddled in the Garden of Eden, right? That's like nursing. And then God's like, oh, you don't need that solid food. So then we eat solid food. We're no longer like being swaddled and nursed in the Garden of Eden. We're kind of like we're out on our own a little bit. Um, in when we go into we get a little rebellious when we're in the desert. When we go into the land of Israel, we are kind of on our own. We're teenagers. We rebel. Actually, in the desert, we're like teenagers, right? God is taking care of us, but we rebel. We go into the land of Israel. Eventually, we're more adults. We're making our own decisions. And this is what Shalom Hartman says. He says the final stage when we really grow up is when there's a story about the oven of Achnai in the Talmud, and they're having a debate about this oven. That this guy invents an oven, it can never become non-kosher. It's like the kosher oven 2000. You can roast a pig in it one day, and the next day, like making your chicken soup, and it's perfectly fine. I mean, you don't make chicken soup, whatever you make in an oven, a quiche. So All the rabbis are like, no way, no way. And a voice comes from heaven and says, what do you have against this guy? He's always right. And Rabban Gamliel gets up, he quotes the Torah and he says, it's not in heaven. Lo b'shamayim hi. You gave us permission to decide. We're deciding. Sorry, we don't listen to heavenly voices. And right, that's the moment that the Jews have grown up. We make our own decisions. We're adults. We don't even listen to God. Like you gave us the tools, we're using them. So you can kind of look at, and not only do we grow up, but in a sense, God grows up, right? Because God starts out saying, okay, no, don't do anything. Don't eat the tree. I want you to be babies forever. And then with both Noah and Moses, when humans sin, God's response is, I'm just going to destroy it all and start over. This is awful. And then really the second time around, Moses says, you can't keep doing that. You can't keep destroying and starting over. And then God says, okay, fine. You'll have a temple. You'll have a Mishkan. There'll be a way to right things that people do wrong. So God is also learning to tolerate the imperfection of the humanity that God created. So I know theologically it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to say that like God's growing up, God gives, bad parenting at the beginning, but it's an interesting reading. Quickly about Satan, right? In Genesis, what does Satan do? Or what does the snake do? Which we do identify the snake with Satan. So what does the snake do?
It's promising power. It's promising to become powerful, the
Yeah.
king.
So the snake tempts Eve. The snake does tempt Eve. Is the snake in that moment? I mean, I guess God punishes the snake, but like, does the snake serve a purpose in God's world in the Garden of Eden?
It's testing.
Yeah. So the snake's job is to test us. Satan is the prosecuting angel. So Satan is actually doing Satan's job. Satan is not seen as a rebellious angel. Satan is doing God's job. Yeah. Okay. Last thing for the day. Let me pull this up. Okay, the prayer we say every day is called the Shema. And we say it when we're told to say it when we wake up and when we go to bed twice a day. And it reads literally, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. I don't like this translation, so I'm going to change it. Oh, that doesn't work well, did it? Okay. The Lord is our God, the Lord alone. What does that mean?
Singular.
What's that, Virat?
Singular. A singular entity.
So their translation, the Lord is one, means a singular entity. There's only one God. We believe in one God. What if I change the translation though? Because I don't think it's actually I actually think this is a better translation. To the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. How does that change it?
It's not only a single, implying there is only a single God would imply there could be like other single gods, maybe, but
What I mean,
that there's only one unique single entity.
so if I say only Hashem is our God, what does that mean? Only Hashem is my God.
That there are others, as if, but there are
Well,
no
they're
others.
not
Yeah.
what?
He's the only God. Like we don't
So
pray to any other thing.
right. So Hashem is the only thing I serve, right? What are the other things people serve?
Money.
Money. They serve their feelings, right? What I want to do. There's a kind of like what I want to do, whatever I want to do is like sacred. They serve all sorts of things. So it's right saying the Talmud says it's accepting the yoke of the kingship of heaven, accepting that I'm working for Hashem. That's my job in life. I'm working for Hashem. Um, So let's try, and when we do it, we cover our eyes, although if you're learning it, obviously you can peek, but we cover our eyes and it's generally chanted. So repeat after me. The words go like this: Shema. You guys see the
Shema
words? Yisrael,
Yisrael
Adonai,
Adonai
Eloheinu,
Eloheinu
Adonai,
Adonai
Echad.
Echad.
Right. So you can say it in Hebrew or English. The second part of it we whisper. It's Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Let's try saying that. Baruch
Baruch
Shem
Shem
Kavod
Kavod
Malchuto
Malchuto
Malchuto.
Leolam
Leolam
Va'ed.
Va'ed.
Right.
And there you can easily find the chant online. The way it's when we chant it, it often sounds like this. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. So I want to encourage you guys for homework to learn this over the next couple weeks. Say it regularly. And yeah. Any other things anybody wants to talk about this week?
Bashing or slapping our four species and holding them while we're praying. I mean, how?
Thing?
Yeah, well, I saw the Orthodox bringing them into the shul and hitting them on the floor. Then I've
Okay.
seen some that hold them in their hand when they're doing sakrit. So I mean, I just
Yes.
want.
So you can hold them in your hand. So they're used during Hallel. Hallel is a set of songs that are
There we
done during
go.
the festivals. And during that, there are certain things that are done with them. So they'll say, like, there's a song where they say, Ho do Adonai ki ki to, and they move in all six directions when they do that. So we
Right.
do use use the lulav when we bench Hallel. Um, and then we also use it when there's a circling we do, circling around the synagogue. The last day of Sukkot is called Hoshana Rabbah. So Hoshana is this prayer. It means save us. And we say this Hoshana prayer every morning on Sukkot. We say one of them. On Hoshana Rabbah, Rabbah means great. We say all seven of them, the whole thing. And then at the end, we take a bunch of willow twigs, not the whole lulav,
Okay.
and we whip it against a hard surface.
Uh,
If you do this in a room that's like a hard floor, it sounds like a thunderstorm. So I actually think it's like an ancient tradition for praying for rain. Because if you look at the Hoshano, you're praying for rain. And it's the beginning of the rainy season in Israel.
yeah, because it is
Yeah.
a festival of harvest.
But they also with the Hoshano, I love it. They march around. They have the lulav and etrog. They have the shofar. You blow the shofar each time you march around. Like if you don't Ben, if your Rabbi Ben isn't doing Hoshana Rabbah, you got to beg him to do Hoshana Rabbah. It's
Well,
great.
we do it, but it's in it like a little collective. But we have it scheduled. It's on the
Good.
tip.
And the liturgy, it's crazy. So I've learned a little bit of cantorial, like I can little. And the liturgy on that day, you have high holiday melody, high holiday mode, you have Shabbat mode, you have like festival mode, it's this mishmash of the entire year. It's actually a pretty crazy thing.
And he's a cantor, so it appeals to him already. That's why he's so.
Oh, okay. There you go. There you go. Okay, so we're not meeting next week. We're off because of the Yontif. Um, enjoy the rest of Sukkot. Enjoy the rest of Simchat Torah. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. We are having Talmud, or we're having Talmud today, Hebrew next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for everything. Bye.
Yeah, I'm glad you joined us.